Hi guys, I'm Megan Gooding, I'm your instructor, and we're going to do a little discussion on plagiarism. So if you're ready, let's get started. What we've seen in education in the past few years is that plagiarism has become a huge problem as the internet becomes more and more a part of our lives, things like Google. This is a survey by the company Turnitin, which does plagiarism services for universities and schools. And what they see is that college presidents have seen an increase by 55% of college presidents that were surveyed have seen an increase in the issue of plagiarism. When Turnitin receives papers, they're able to track how many instances of plagiarism they've received. And in 2008, there were around about 20 million instances. As of 2011, it had gone up to 40 million instances of plagiarism. So it's really kind of an epidemic in education. I want to talk to you about the real world consequences of plagiarism. The first instance this was in 2012, and Harvard found that 125 of their students had cheated on their final exam, which is very, very serious, and I believe that many of them were expelled from the university. This media personality had written an article for Time magazine, and it was found that it was copied almost word for word from a historian named Jill Lepore out of, I think it was the New Yorker magazine or out of New York Times or something like that. And right away, it became a media sensation. It really hindered his career. This was 2012 as well. And Time magazine immediately put him on a 1-month suspension, as well as his employer at CNN. And to this day, people are still checking his work to see if he plagiarized. So he never got rid of that reputation. So as you can see, it's not just an educational problem, it's a real world work problem. What I want to talk to you about in this video are the different types of plagiarism. We're going to look at 4. You've got direct plagiarism, which is word for word copying either from a source on the internet or maybe from a friend. You've got plagiarism, self-plagiarism, which is, let's say I took History 1301 and then for some reason there's an overlap in History 1302 and I just turned in the same paper that I wrote in 1301 into my teacher for 1302. That would be self-plagiarism. Mosaic plagiarism, so you've got kind of a piece-by-piece copying going on. Maybe you're switching out a few words. And then accidental plagiarism, so maybe you didn't quite cite your source correctly or something like that. So let's talk about direct plagiarism first. Let's say that I'm going to have you write an article on Thomas Jefferson. It's going to be an assignment. And you go to Wikipedia and we copy this very first sentence. It says Thomas Jefferson was an American founding father, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, and the 3rd president of the United States. So direct plagiarism would be me highlighting that sentence and pasting it in my paper word for word. You'll notice that there are 2 instances here. We've got one in the center that keeps the same structure and order of the words. The third one down at the bottom keeps the same words but arranges the order differently. That would still be an example of direct plagiarism. So as we talked about self-plagiarism earlier, this is similar. This is a copy of the 2nd chapter of my thesis for grad school, and let's say I'm going for my doctorate, and I turn this chapter in to my professor in a different class. That would be self-plagiarism. So I'm actually copying from myself. Mosaic plagiarism is where you take the essence of what's being said and you keep some of the words, maybe sub out a few, but the structure is still very similar. So in this particular example, we've got an excerpt from Wikipedia on Thomas Jefferson. You'll notice that the red pieces are the pieces that have been plagiarized. So the one on the left is the source. The one on the right is the student version. And so you'll notice that on the left it says the vast Louisiana Territory from France and sent out the Lewis and Clark expedition. On the right it says France of the large Louisiana territory, so we just subbed out large for vast but kept the structure. And then he sent out the Lewis and Clark expedition. So again, this is very similar. We haven't changed a lot of the structure, a lot of the words are the same. So this would be mosaic plagiarism. Here's another example. So on the left is actually the student example. On the right is the original source. So on the left it says, only 2 years later, all these friendly Sioux were suddenly plunged into new conditions. Whereas on the right it says, contrast the condition into which all these friendly Indians are suddenly plunged now. So you notice plunge is on both sides. Friendly Sioux, friendly Indians, it's essentially the same thing. So we've got two versions of plagiarism here that we're about to talk about. We've got intentional plagiarism, which happens if you purchase a paper from the internet and submit it as your own. You copy from a source without quoting the information or without citing it. You cut and paste your work from a source without quoting or citing it. Or you might ask somebody else to write your paper. This is intentional plagiarism. You know you're breaking the rules. Unintentional or accidental plagiarism is where maybe you paraphrase but you don't do a really good job. The structure's still kind of there. So you're not meaning to copy, but it turns out that way. Maybe you didn't do a really good job putting quotes around the entire source, the entire bit of information you pulled from your source. Or maybe you didn't cite a source all the way, or you cited it incorrectly. That would be accidental plagiarism. So I get this one a lot. I'll have a student copy information from their source and they think they're covered because they listed their source in their bibliography. That still doesn't actually cover you. Just because you cited the source in your bibliography does not give you free license to cut and paste chunks from somebody else's work without putting quotation marks around it. So let's talk about when you should cite your work. If it's common knowledge, you don't have to cite it. So everybody knows there are 50 states in the United States of America. That's not something that I would have to put a source on. If you've paraphrased, so you've read an article and you've put it in your own words, you still need to cite that source because it's not your own original work. You've gotten the idea from somewhere else. Basically, if it comes from a book, a magazine, the internet, even a person, you've got to cite it. If it's not your own work, you must cite it. And the reason why we do this as historians is so that if somebody reads my paper and they have issue with what I'm saying or they want to do the study on their own, they look at my sources and see where I got the ideas. So it's kind of a professional norm. Let's talk about best practices, how to keep yourself out of trouble. Make sure you manage your time, and as you write your assignment, cite your work as you go. In almost every instance where I've had plagiarism, I would say 9 times out of 10, the student ran out of time and panicked, and that doesn't do you any good. It's better to ask for an extension than copy someone else's work. If you're like me, as I read, I like to take notes. If you're not in the mode of translating what's written in the article or in the book into your own words as you take those notes, be sure that you put quotation marks around the information that you write if it's directly from a video or a source you're reading. So that just will keep you out of trouble. A lot of times as well, we'll find that somebody will have plagiarism trouble if they've read something they really don't understand. If you read a source and you can't put it into your own words, then there is a good chance you need to find another source or find somebody to help you understand it better. And when in doubt, cite your source, use quotation marks, or use a parenthetical notation, which you'll see information about in this module later on. And of course, when in doubt, ask. I would be more than happy to help you with anything. We will be using Turnitin in this class, so submit your work a little bit early. I've left it open for resubmission until the due date, so if you submit it to Turnitin and the report comes back bad, you have a chance to fix it and resubmit. And if you have any trouble at all, please let me know. As long as it's before that due date, I'll be more than happy to help you. And even if it falls afterwards and you're worried about plagiarism, if you contact me, I'll work with you. So later on in the module, you're going to find out how I would like you to cite your sources and also the consequences for plagiarism and scholastic dishonesty. So you'll find that information later on in the module.